Seriously, Hayden Christensen came up in the show and was like,
I don't want one position, I want all positions.
be honest, who had Hayden Christensen stealing the show on their Star Wars bingo card? This episode is simultaneously the best and most confusing episode of the series. I figured I must be missing something because so much of it made no sense to me. So I went and watched all 7 seasons of Clone Wars, and it still doesn't make any sense. But now I know why. Clone Wars was great through the first 5 seasons, and season 6 wasn't that much off. But season 7 is a whole other animal. That season doesn't feel like a continuation of the show. It feels like fan service. The show was building to this tension between Ahsoka, Anakin, and the Jedi, and I think most people assumed it would end with some confrontation between Ahsoka and Anakin, probably with him killing her. But that's completely dodged in the final season. Instead, we get a tribute to Ahsoka's awesomeness as she survives the impossible, Order 66, a fight with Darth Maul, and crash landing on the moon as the starship tears apart in the atmosphere. All of this is said during episode 3, but there's a little tie-in between the film and the show. That's exactly what's happened with the Ahsoka series. It's just fan service, but unlike the final season of Clone Wars, it's not anchored by any key events, so it's not really building towards anything. It's just there. Things happen and they're supposed to be meaningful, but since there's nothing giving them any weight, again, they're just kind of there. Perfect example. Hera shows up with her son and finds that everyone's gone except for Huyang, who's standing behind a rock on the cliff holding Sabine's helmet while looking out at the ocean. He says that he told them to stay together, but they never listen, and this is supposed to be a powerful moment to show how far Ahsoka and Sabine have fallen, except we never got to see them together in the first place, and the show hasn't even bothered to hint at what that time was like. So it's like randomly showing a rockbiter scene from the Neverending Story. Scratch that. It's like referencing the Neverending Story to anyone under 35. No one knows what you're talking about. Then we get to see the impossible, something no one ever expected. We get to see Hayden Christensen steal the show. No one saw that coming. He's taken flack for his acting over the years, but I never thought he was a bad actor. It's really what he was given to work with, but even then, no one expected an Anakin cameo to be the best thing about this show. So it turns out that ILM did put all their time into the VFX for this episode, because the de-aged Anakin looks much better here. This whole scene, again, is nothing but fan service. Anakin claims that he's there to finish Ahsoka's training, but he's really there so we could see the fight we got cheated out of from Clone Wars. There's also vague references to the original trilogy.
I won't fight you.
I've heard that before.
Look, I'm not gonna lie, I thought it was cool. I smiled, I got all the references, but I also knew I was just being served up a fresh bowl of member berries. Anakin keeps going on about how Ahsoka is very close to death and that she has to choose whether to live or die, but he also implies that she's kind of already chosen death, so she's really being given another chance to live. Okay, but where did that happen? She's running around the galaxy looking for Thrawn. That's not a thing you do if you've given up on life. There's nothing in the show at all to suggest that she's done this, so where is this coming from? It's like Dave Filoni wants the audience to fill in the gaps for him instead of him making it clear what Ahsoka's problems are, but he doesn't even point people in a general direction. All he's done is make a cool looking scene and toss in a little fan service to keep people from realizing there's nothing there. In the next scene, Doc Samson somehow senses Ahsoka and Anakin through the Force and can actually hear the lightsabers clashing. He gets Hera to listen, and she's somehow able to hear it even though she can't sense the Force, and this gets her to have her team go to search the waters for Ahsoka and Sabine. And when the Asian dude is like, "What just happened?" Huyang goes, "Oh, the boys got the Force." And dude is like, "Oh, okay." It's stupid, funny, and awesome at the same time. I loved it. But then it gets to the most confusing part of the episode, and probably the show, the Clone Wars flashbacks. Ahsoka thinks she's a match for Anakin. She isn't, so he cuts the ground and sends Ahsoka into a Clone Wars battle from when she just began as Anakin's Padawan. She watches the clone troopers get slaughtered and then sits next to one before she and Anakin have this talk about why she's seeing all of this. The gist is that Ahsoka is bothered by growing up a soldier. She's been placed in the war as a commander leading troops when she has no idea what she's doing, and that led to troops losing their lives. It's a great concept to explore, which is why they did it in Clone Wars in the first season, and they needed a whole episode to do it. Here it's crammed into a couple of minutes between 2 other ideas, and they just breeze by it so fast that you might miss that Ahsoka's feelings are a bit of a retcon. In Clone Wars, her problem wasn't that she wasn't ready to be a soldier, it was that she was too eager and overconfident. She's so sure of her plan that she ignores orders to fall back, a trait she's learned from Anakin, and winds up getting most of her team killed. It's only after that she realizes the actual cost of being a leader and of war. Now you'd think Dave Filoni would remember that, but it seems to have slipped his mind. Throughout most of Clone Wars, Ahsoka doesn't necessarily want to be a soldier, that much is clear, but she isn't opposed to the war. She just questions the Jedi's role in it. It takes several seasons for her to become disillusioned with the war, the Republic, and the Jedi, and so this whole scene feels off. The counter to that criticism is that this is a flashback, so it's not Ahsoka and Anakin from that time, which is why they're acting out of character, which is fair, but the scene appears to suggest that these are feelings Ahsoka actually had at that time, so it's just confusing. Are they reliving the moments and talking about things they never said, or are they just debating but using the past as a backdrop? It gets more confusing when Ahsoka questions if all she has to teach her Padawan is how to fight, to which Anakin asks if she really wants a Padawan, and Ahsoka asks why he said that, and he says he was joking, and then they just drop the topic to complain about him joking at a time like this. Really? You're just gonna skip over whether Ahsoka wants a Padawan? Hasn't that been the main issue between her and Sabine? Hasn't that been one of the main focuses, if you can call it that, of this show? How do you just sashay your ass right by that? It's a key point. Does she want a Padawan? Is her fear of only teaching her student how to fight the reason she abandoned Sabine? All of that is important to the decisions Ahsoka makes, so it's weird to see the show jump over that just to get to this argument between Ahsoka and Anakin over whether Anakin should be more serious, which is another retcon because dude was very serious for most of the show. He did make jokes, but the moment that it got to fighting or interrogating or just anything important, it's hard to believe anyone missed how close this dude was to turn into the dark side, because he was not hiding it. We get a little cut back to Hera where her droid tells her how to find Ahsoka, and then it cuts back to the attack on Mandalore, which happened in the final season of Clone Wars. Props to Ariana Greenblatt who plays young Ahsoka. She looked awesome in the lightsaber fight, and her chemistry with Hayden Christensen is perfect. They are vibing in these scenes, and I'm not surprised to see people asking for a live-action Clone Wars show with them. I don't know how that works without just reshooting the original show, but these two are great together. What they have to work with, not so much. We get to see the thing everyone expected to see in Clone Wars, Ahsoka realizing Anakin is turning to the dark side. There were hints of it in the Clone Wars show, but no payoff. This is supposed to be the payoff. There's even an element of Ahsoka questioning whether she could have stopped Anakin from turning had she stayed with him, but the show just breezes right by that. Instead, Anakin gives Ahsoka a choice, live or die. We get to see Anakin turn to the dark side, pop the red saber, and go after his Padawan. We get to see Darth Vader as he could have been without a ruined body. He is unstoppable. Ahsoka is literally no challenge to him. He's just toying with her the whole time. And to Hayden Christensen's credit, if this is him doing the fighting, he's still got the chops, but the pacing and choreography could use some work. It feels slow, much slower than it should be. Sure, both actors are in their 40s, but they trained and it's unlikely they're this slow. It seems like a directing choice, not something to do with the actors. That said, it does kind of work for the scene because it really makes it look like Anakin is toying with Ahsoka. He could have killed her 7 different times. There's one part where he just grabs her hands and casually walks forward like it's no effort to overpower her. This is the power he would have had if his body hadn't been wrecked. That's something people kind of miss, but it's an important part. Based on what Anakin does as Vader, if he had his regular body, he would have been as powerful or possibly more powerful than Sidious. That's what the Jedi were sensing, and that's why they were afraid and distrustful of him. He's unusually powerful in the Force. It's nice to see that shown on film. However, if he's so powerful, what chance does Ahsoka have of defeating him? None, which is why she's able to defeat him in the dumbest way possible. She takes his lightsaber from him. Now we don't get to see that. Oh no, it conveniently happens just below the camera, so we have no idea how in the hell Ahsoka manages to take it from him without cutting him or herself in the process. And then Ahsoka steps up, puts the blade to Anakin's face, and shows that she too can tap into the dark side, and then says she chooses life, and throws away Anakin's saber, just like Luke. Because that's all this is. This is just a Luke versus Vader fight from the Return of the Jedi, but slower and without meaning or weight. Like I said, I watched all of Clone Wars and then rewatched this episode. It still makes no sense why any of this is happening. At what point did Ahsoka choose death? At what point was she tempted by the dark side? Is this because she's working alone? Is this because she ditched Sabine? None of this is answered. Instead, Ahsoka wakes up after Hera's team drags her out of the water. She bumps into Doc Samson, who tells her that he sensed her through the Force. She seems shocked. Hera then jumps in to send the boy away, and I'm like, don't you want Ahsoka to talk to the boy about his powers? There's no reason for Force-sensitive people to hide anymore, and you've seen how useful his skills could be. Wouldn't it be better to train him? But no, they skip right past that to have Ahsoka find the sliced-up map and use the Force to see what happened. She finds out that Sabine betrayed them, but doesn't tell Hera. Meanwhile, the New Republic has sent ships to get Hera and her team. Mon Mothma tells Hera that she'll be tried and court-martialed for disobeying orders. Outside, Ahsoka realizes she could use the space whales to get to the other galaxy now that the map has been destroyed. So she has a quick palette swap for her clothes, becoming Ahsoka the Off-White, and uses the Force to get the space whales to take her and Huyang, and just her and Huyang, to Sabine and Thrawn in its mouth. Is there any reason why none of the others can come along? No, not really. They just don't. When Huyang asks if she knows where the space whales will take them, she's like, nah, but it's better than doing nothing. Solid plan. And that's the end of the episode. Seriously, what is this show? What is the point of this show? What is the purpose of telling this story? What is the actual story? We're 5 episodes in, I still have no clue what this show is about. There's no sense of threat or danger at all. I'm not the slightest bit worried about Thrawn, the corruption in the New Republic, Baylan and Shin, or Ahsoka and Sabine's relationship. Stuff is happening, sure, but none of it seems to matter on a large or small scale. I can't think of the last time I watched a show that felt this aimless, especially one that has an obvious endpoint. We know this is eventually going to get to Ahsoka versus Thrawn, but the show feels like it's meandering everywhere and nowhere all at once. It's like the show was written by a coked-out Jar Jar Binks, like he got higher than Giraffe Pussy and just started writing. The show wants to be meaningful, but it's not setting up any of that. It wants to be new Star Wars, and it's got all the trappings of Star Wars, but it doesn't feel like a Star Wars story. It's got all this nostalgia bait, but for stuff that technically never even happened. I thought maybe I was missing something because I didn't watch Clone Wars, so I went and watched all 7 seasons, and I still find the Ahsoka series confusing. I don't get the message, I don't get the connections, I don't really feel the nostalgia, at least not for Ahsoka. Other than just making a live-action version of Ahsoka and giving Rosario Dawson something to do, what is the point? After 5 episodes, I shouldn't still be asking this question, and yet here I am doing just that. Kinda sad. But what do I know? I'm just some guy.